the first DC film of 2023 and is the sequel to the previous Shazam film, which took place in 2019. Once again, back directing this film is David F. Sandberg. And once again, Zachary Levi and Asher Angel combined for Billy Batson, with Zachary Levi taking the form of Shazam. And after the ending of the first one, with all of the kids gaining powers, they kind of all want to do their own thing, all want to be their own superheroes. And Billy is having a hard time making a team effort with the family. But as they're having all of these issues, the daughters of Atlas, played by Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, are now added to the fray as they want the powers of their father that was taken away from them from the wizard. Returning is Jaimin Hunso as the wizard. That are now the powers of the kids. Again, the kids are played Billy Batson by Asher Angel, Freddie Freeman by Jack Dylan Glazer. You also have Mary, played by Grace Carolyn Curry. You have Darla Faith Herman, Ian Chen as Eugene, and Jovan Armand as Pedro. And the adult Shazam version of the kids, played by Zachary Levi, Adam Brody, Ross Butler, DJ Cotrona, and Megan Good. And also added to the fray of this movie is Rachel Zegler, who plays the character of Anne, who Freddie meets at school and learns that she also has powers of her own that affects the daughters of Atlas. The film is 2 hours and 10 minutes long and is PG-13. Welcome back to a brand new movie review here on Max Talks Movies. My name is Max Lindberg. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, ring the bell. I do other movie, TV show reviews, as well as movie rankings and a box office breakdown show where we broke down this past week how Shazam did at the box office, which is not very good. Comment down below, did you like the first Shazam film? If you've seen this, did you like this one more or less? Do you want to see these characters continuing on in James Gunn's DC? And no spoilers, please, 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 no spoilers. Even if the marketing team has already spoiled to you a lot of the big surprises, I don't want to do that for people who still haven't seen Shazam Fury of the Gods. So no spoilers in the comment section down below. I will actually be doing a spoiler review, I think, later in the week. And also, please like the video. So as I said, this is the first of 4 DC films coming out this year. And these 4 films are all part of the previous regime at DC. But this is the first DC film that James Gunn, as the head of DC, has allowed to hit theaters. But again, not his movie. This was shot years ago, so obviously have that into the mix. I also really like the first Shazam film. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Like I close to love the first Shazam film. I think it's a great little superhero movie that you just don't see DC do that often. The comedy work, the family, the orphan, all that storyline for me really worked in that first film. Also, these 2 films take place in Philadelphia, which I grew up in and now go to college in. So it's very cool to see Philadelphia in a superhero film. So I was actually really excited for this movie. It makes sense to continue this franchise, but I also wasn't excited because I didn't know if this would feel like a fire sale movie where you're kind of watching it knowing that these are the characters that are not going to be moving on to James Gunn's thing. And I'll say off the bat before I get into that is I'll address 2 things before I get into my positives, my negatives, and my score. My positive, before I get my positives, is that this definitely does not feel like a fire sale. Like you'll never see these characters before, but you're also unsure if these storylines, characters, and there's also 2 post-credit scenes, by the way, there's a mid and a post, if those mean anything for the future of DC. Obviously there's a lot of press about one of the post-credit scenes, which I still won't even get into here. Even Zachary Levi has commented on. Again, I don't know if this is the direction. I'll get more into this in the spoiler review as well. So I didn't feel like really a fire sale thing to me. There's also 2 post-credit scenes to stay tuned in for. So my positives, my negatives. First, I'll start with my positives. So for me, by far and away, the best part of this movie is the dynamic and the characters of Freddie Freeman and Anne in this movie. So Jack Dylan Grazer and Rachel Zegler for me are by far and away the best aspects of this movie. Freddie, while Asher Angel is definitely one of the main characters of the first Shazam film, he is sidelined more than any of the returning characters in this movie. And while Asher Angel as teenage Billy gets sidelined for most of the movie, he might have like 5 minutes of screen time, I swear, in this movie. Jack Dylan Grazer gets a complete upgrade, while Adam Brody gets a downgrade of the adult version of Shazam. And I think it works in this movie's benefit. The movie at some point splits into 2 different pathways, one with Freddie and one with Zachary Levi's Shazam. And the way more interesting stuff that goes on in this movie is when Freddie is in the movie and Freddie's interacting with Anne, played by Rachel Zegler. who's now in her second big movie following, second movie in general following West Side Story in 2021. And both these actors are extremely talented and hopefully continue to get more work outside of this franchise moving forward. First of all, I've always liked Jack Dylan Grazer all the way back from It. And I thought he was very good in Luca, and he has also some other good voice performances as well. But he's really funny in this movie, and they kind of have this kind of weird romantic, they kind of said that this could be a romantic relationship between Anne and Freddie, and the chemistry between Zegler and Grazer is fantastic. The awkwardness, the authenticity of this high schooler who's has this crutch and he gets bullied, and never thinking of any girl ever seeing him like that and seeing Anne do that to him. I just really love their relationship. And for me, nothing in the movie comes close to as interesting as when Freddie's on screen or Anne's on screen. I think they're both clearly dynamic. Grazer and Zegler are terrific in the film. And especially Zegler, who just oozes charisma and star power, in my opinion, when I watch her on screen. And I know it's really bad for her that her first kind of big two movies are kind of bombs at the box office with West Side Story and Shazam. But I think she's made to be a leading woman in Hollywood. She oozes that on-screen stardom that I think not a lot of the other actors in this movie bring to the table. And I feel that in Zegler a lot. She's charming. She's authentic. You are kind of rooting for her throughout the entire movie, even when you learn some things that are not introduced in the trailers, which I'm not going to spoil here. But I just thought her and Grazer were just absolutely terrific in the film. Also, thought some of the action scenes were kind of decent, honestly. There were some really fun enough action scenes for me in this movie. There's a lot of CGI, but for me, I thought some of the action was very cool, especially the action scene that takes place in the very opening scene of the movie. I loved the opening scene to the movie to kind of kick things off. And again, just like the last movie, I think the orphan, the family storyline for me just really works again in this film. There's especially a scene between Asher Angel as Billy and his adopted mother, Rosa, played by our Marta Milan. So hopefully I'm saying that name right. And it was one of the most emotional scenes in either of the two Shazam films. And I had chills watching the scene. I thought it was absolutely terrific. It might be on the nose, but I thought the scene between Angel and Milan's was excellent. And I think those are the type of scenes the movie needed more of, in my opinion. And also, I always like the dynamics of just the family in general. I just love this family, both adult and teenage. I think a lot of these are just very likable actors, and because of the last film, you do tend to care about all these characters. I think Jaimin Hanso also gets an upgrade in this film over the previous film, has a lot more to do in this movie, and also a lot more comedy. It's actually one of the funnier aspects of the movie as well. I'll say this movie also moves at a very fast pace. I wasn't checking my clock at all. I think it's probably the right runtime for this type of movie. But as you can tell, let's get into some of my negatives. And this for me was a disappointing movie. It's definitely not a bad movie for me. I did have fun watching this. As I said, some of the Freddie and Anne stuff was really great to me in this movie, and there's some really great moments in it. But honestly, and I really did not expect to say this, I think one of the biggest problems with this movie, there's two big problems with the movie. And you can say this will make it a bad movie, but for me, it wasn't. And the first one is obviously the villains for me really did not work. They honestly completely waste Helen Mirren in this movie. Who just, these two actors, and I really like Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, but any two actresses could have played those roles. And especially Helen Mirren of such gravitas and legendary stardom in Hollywood, they just wasted her potential in this movie. And then I think they gave Lucy Liu, by far and away in this movie, the worst dialogue. Now, I don't think Lucy Liu is one of the greatest actors of our time or something, but she also was given some of probably the worst dialogue to give in the entire movie. And there's just no characters to them. There's just gods who want Shazam's powers back. That's kind of it. And I think there was a chance here to give a lot more mythology into the Greek god stuff and the god stuff in this movie, that they had to give more screen time for our villains. Because again, I just didn't care a single bit about the characters. And because they're even gods, I didn't even feel like they were threats to Shazam. I just didn't feel like there were any threats, and Shazam and the family weren't any danger. I think that's one of the biggest problems. And there's also just too many MacGuffins that our villains need to get. There's a staff, there's an apple, there's a tree. There's just so many MacGuffins that are in this movie. It gets like ridiculous on how many things the villains need for their plan to work. I think one stereotypical MacGuffin is enough for these type of movies, but now there's like 3 or 4 in this movie. And another problem that, again, I was not expecting to say was I really don't know what Zachary Levi was doing in this movie from a performance point of view. He's not like awful in the movie, but I think in the first movie, what's great about it is, well, yes, teenage Billy isn't cracking those type of jokes. You can still find a blend of teenage Billy being adult Billy, Zachary Levi. The Action Angel Zachary Levi transition for me made sense in the first Shazam film. And now it feels totally out of whack. Zachary Levi went from like a 6 teenage angst in the first film all the way up to like a 10 in this movie. And he's one of the most annoying aspects of the film. And I feel bad because I actually truly think Levi is perfect for this character. And if Gunn tends to keep him, I'll be all for it because I do like Levi in the role. I'm not going to get into the politics and the COVID stuff here, but Levi is doing like an SNL sketch of the performance he did himself in the first film. It's 5 times more over the top, 5 times more ridiculous, and he also makes Billy look like such an idiot in this movie. He makes Billy seem like he's like a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old more than he is a 17 to 20-year-old, which he is in real life. And because in real life, Asher Angel is literally my age, and Levi plays him like he's 10 years younger than my age, and that's just not the truth. So that's one of the biggest problems in the movie. I think Levi's playing it too over the top, too ridiculous, and at times too childish. Again, Asher Angel in real life is 20 years old, so about to turn 21. So Levi can play him with a bit more maturity than some of the other kids, especially like Megan Good has to play like her kid a lot younger. But Levi plays him like he's 10 years old, and for me, it became quite distracting. Another problem here is that the tone at times in the third act just doesn't blend together. There's fun action scenes. There's also some of the worst, I think one of the worst product placements I've ever seen in a movie I've ever seen in my life that pulled me right out of the movie once it happened 2 times. But there are a lot of civilians die in brutal ways in this movie. And I think in the third act, it's kind of tough to understand why we go from one scene of people, human beings getting chucked into stores, and then Shazam joking about his name to other civilians. For me, tonally, they just don't make a lot of sense. So overall, for me, while the tone could be off, I still had a fun enough time watching Shazam. I actually like this more than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I just dropped to a 2.5 out of 5. But Shazam: Fury of the Gods, for me, I had a fun enough time. Really, Anne and Freddie really carry this movie for me, as well as the whole family dynamic as a whole. But Levi's really weird performance in this movie doesn't really help me at all. That's too over the top. The villains I just don't care about at all. And I'll be really interested to see, based on how bad this movie did at the box office, if we see these storylines or characters moving forward in DC. So I'm going to give Shazam: Fury of the Gods a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm going to go 64%. 64% for Shazam: Fury of the Gods. No, I'll go 65%. I'll be nice. 65% for Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Let me know your thoughts of this movie in the comment section down below. Like the video, subscribe. More videos, including reviews of The Mandalorian, are coming out soon. Bad Batch, John Wick Chapter 4. Stay tuned. I'll see you guys soon.